We're live.
We're live. Okay, thank you. So this is the Policy Committee on June 17th. Thanks to me, we're coming to order 10 minutes late at 4:40 p.m. And we have Mr. Davis and Attorney Hull, who we now have a committee of 3. And then it looks like we have Dr. Thomas, hello. And then we're joined by Mr. Pruitt and Andrea, whose last name I can't remember, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You just call me Andrea Chalice.
Andrea Chalice, okay. And then I see Mr. Gaskins and Dr. Watley. And I'm sure there's some people out here I can't see because of the windows. Oh, Mr. Harris, hello, and Ms. Franklin and Angela, thank you. Okay, first thing on the agenda is to amend or adopt the agenda.
I
So
move
moved.
that we second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, thank you. Previous policy committee the minutes. Did those look okay to everybody? This was from May 20th. That was the one where we had the long discussion about BDC. And then we had a really long discussion about the ones we just pushed through. Yeah, new business. Okay. Any questions there? It looks good to me. Okay, so we have a motion to pass the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Dr. Thomas. Superintendent
Yes,
report.
ma'am. I do not have anything. Mr. Harrison, I met today and looked at the policies. And so I know one we pulled from the last board meeting in order to kind of revisit. And so I'm just ready to participate in the discussion as we move forward.
Okay, great. I think the only thing from my report is the calendar, which Mr. Harris provided for me a few days ago and I approved. And actually, the second tab, the extended with due dates, I think is the most important because what's on the first tab is there, but also so one of the things now that we have the committee of 3 moving forward is that we're going to set some pretty solid deadlines for when we bring something new, we give Mr. Pruitt and Andrea enough time to look at it because that's been a problem this spring, is that they've been rushed and haven't had the time that they need. Similarly, members of the staff need a little more time for some of these things. We can't push as fast as we have been pushing. That's not sustainable. So we're going to set the pace a little more measured. And this is going into, so this is effective for the September board work session. So we're still going to have stuff happening in July and August, but starting with the September board work session, we'll have our policy committee meeting on the 19th. We'll meet, Mr. Harris and I will meet on the 12th to set the agenda for the 19th. And then on the 5th, we will have already pretty much established what things we're going to talk about. Only the things that are ready, that have been reviewed by Mr. Pruitt, will be put on the agenda. I think, Mr. Harris, am I saying that properly?
Yes,
We
ma'am.
really want to avoid this. Lawrence and I spin up an agenda and then we share it with Mr. Pruitt and say, okay, you've got a week to deal with this. And yeah, that's just not going to work. So we need to kind of make sure that what he has ready for us is ready for us then to put on the agenda and then discuss at the policy committee meeting.
I really
Which
like it.
means, you like that? Okay, thank you, Nicole. I appreciate that. So what that means is that, so for example, Mr. Davis has put a few policies on our plate that I totally agree with. I want to have on the plate, but if they're going to be on the September board work session, that means we need to have the suggestions in place by July 29th. Now, he's already provided us those suggestions, so we've got an extra month. So maybe we can get them into the August lineup. So I'm not saying we won't be able to deal with those until September, but this hopefully sets the timing so that if you and I or somebody comes to you and wants us to think about this policy, we really have to, in order to put it on the September work session, we have to have it given to us by the 29th of July. So that's a long lead time. And it's just because there's so many moving parts. And we have really tested the patience of our legal staff and our district staff doing what we've been doing for the past year and a half. So bear with me. I know, Mr. Davis, you like to do things when they become really, really important and urgent. And we will still have some accommodation, I suppose, of those sorts of things, but this is the goal for sure. And I'm sure things will be added to our plate, but this is the goal. So any questions or concerns about this?
It seems fast to me. I mean, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but if something that's suggested on July 29th and Mike gets it August the 5th, and then we discuss it on the 19th, I mean, that's pretty quick. I mean, I don't think that's slowing things down, is it?
I think there have been a few things we've thrown at Mike and Andrea on very short notice.
Really?
And
Okay.
I think we have done that, if I'm not overstating it, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, Dr. Yeager and Mr. Davis, that actually gives Mr. Pruitt and Ms. Jolliffe a little over a week and a half to review the policy. And then that gives them a chance to put in their legal recommendations. So that way, when Dr. Yeager, myself, and Ms. Tillman and Ms. Franklin meet, we can make sure everything is there we need for the policy committee agenda setting meeting. And Dr. Yeager's been sending out or keeping draft notes of what's been happening at the policy committee meeting. So it does give them a week and a half or a week between each of the deadlines. So if anything needs to change, we can make any altercations to it.
Yeah, I think that's been the problem, is that we've often had a policy committee agenda setting meeting without the legal guideline or without the legal input. So we put something on the agenda and then Mr. Pruitt has to scramble and has less than a week to get us his comments. And in some cases, he just simply doesn't have enough time because we've given him 12 to do or something. So yeah, I think.
And let me throw in that, and Andrea, correct me if you feel differently, but one part of that is just where you want the legal comments to fit in the process. And I got to say, just to get something and for everybody, including the staff that's been involved in it, to see it for the first time at the policy committee meeting feels awkward to me.
Yeah.
Personally, I like time to talk to the staff and sort of, once it gets here, we've all been involved in it.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Mr. Pruitt. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that the policy committee doesn't actually see. Dr. Thomas, did you have any thoughts about that process? You're okay with this? Okay. Okay, so
Yes, it
unless
looks really
there's,
good, and I think the flow looks good, Dr. Yeager.
okay. And I know, Caitlin, you have been kind of looking through, did you want to say something about the work you're doing in terms of planning, which policies we want to try to tackle in the coming year? Or you want Mr. Harris to tell us more about what you've been doing? You're well. We're all friends here. You can. I haven't invited you to speak before, but.
Yeah, we've just been going through, all the policies that haven't been reviewed in a while, and kind of organizing those for what needs to be gone through next.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a process. I guess I'm sharing with everyone else that we have a process that's even in advance of this suggested policy time. Caitlin is really working on, setting up that pace. And we did skip over in our crazy past year, we did skip over anything that had been reviewed in the last 5 years, or at least I think 3 years, maybe. So we do eventually have to go back and do those in the coming year or two anyway. So, okay. Any other questions or thoughts about this? Then that concludes my report. We can move on to new business. And I'm trying to read, I don't have my two screens today. So GAD, Professional Learning Opportunities. So this is a revision. And I think we're just adding, Lawrence, do you want to walk us through this one, please?
Yeah, well, Dr. Yeager, I believe Ms. McGuire is here from our
Oh,
federal
great.
programs office to talk through the stipend policy. So hope if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Thank you. I didn't see her in my window. So thank you. Ms. McGuire, thank you for being here.
No problem. So all this is the revision to put in the most up-to-date Godot language. And you have to bullet out the information around professional learning. And so we hadn't revised this since 2017 and had been a part of cross-functional monitoring. And this was just one of the suggestions that they gave to make sure that we update this, to make sure that it had the correct verbiage from the Godot rule from around stipend policies. And it pretty much just making sure that we have the same guidelines for federal programs as we have for non-federal programs around the work of giving a stipend around professional learning. That's the only revision.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that. Any questions or concerns?
I've got just a question. If we wanted, instead of using the term improvement plan, if we wanted to use strategic plan, just wordage.
And that's in the yellow. Sorry, I'm sorry. I can't
No, that's in
quite
the,
see.
it's in the second paragraph. It's older language. I mean, we used to say improvement plan, but somewhere along the line, it's in the second paragraph. We started using the term strategic plan. I didn't know if other people thought that we should stick with that.
I would
And
agree.
it's also in the first paragraph as well.
I would agree that we could actually say strategic plan and 90-day plan, because this is tied not only to the district level, but also for the school level. So we probably want to refer to both plans in that paragraph.
Great. Okay. So replace improvement plan with strategic and 90-day plans.
Yes.
Should we say 90-day school improvement plan?
Okay. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, just
90-day.
making the difference between one is the district plan and then the 90-day plan is the school plan.
Okay.
I'm also wondering if we may want to take out the word comprehensive, even though it's a nice word to use. It's kind of like we only have one strategic plan. We don't have a comprehensive one.
We don't have a non-comprehensive.
Yeah. So I feel like it kind of raises the seriousness of our work by.
Yeah, so just delete comprehensive.
Now we take out that comprehensive in the first paragraph as well. I wonder, Brandon, if we should say district strategic plan then, just for clarification.
I would agree with that. I think that would be helpful.
And then plans should be plural.
Did I get it?
And then at the very last paragraph, before we started taking stuff out, it's all over again. It's that fourth paragraph. It says, as part of the district's comprehensive improvement plan.
And is that one just the strategic plan then, or is that? No, it's both of them again.
Looks like
Yeah,
it's
that's both of them again. Yeah.
both again.
Yeah, I like the word strategic a whole lot in improvement. I mean, because it's just this generic, we want to do better versus specifics.
Did I get it?
Just adding the S on plans,
Thank you.
plan as Dr. Yeager mentioned in the other one.
Okay. Great. Any other thoughts or concerns about this one? I think it looks pretty good. Should we move it up or vote to move it onto the board agenda?
I so move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. McGuire.
Thank you.
Is that your only policy that you're involved with
For tonight.
for tonight? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. You're coming by.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, so, oh goody, BCBI.
May I suggest, as the parliamentarian, before you get started, if there's unanimous consent to move items of the agenda around to maybe handle ones that might be handled quicker rather than ones you might get bogged down in, that would be fine.
Excellent. So we have 6 policies in old business. Mr. Pruitt has offered the possibility of moving number 1 to number 6, the position number 1 to position number 6. I think that might be reasonable given that we are using up valuable time with Mr. Gaskin and other staff, Dr. Watley. Yeah, so maybe let's see. Someone has to make the motion and we all have to agree unanimously.
So I'll make a motion that we move policy BCBI to the last policy that we discussed under old business tonight.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it's unanimous. Okay. Sorry, we probably should have thought of that here, Lawrence.
I was thinking ABCDA may be the same, but this may not take as long. So I don't know this one as well.
Oh, yeah, this one. So ABCDA has to do with what do we do when there's an unexpired term. So for example, Mr. Bybee was the previous person in my position and his spouse got a job in California and they decided to move away. So he stepped down from his position as board member and left a vacancy. And I was put into his place after a process. And the process is a little bit complicated, right? Or maybe it's not complicated enough. I don't know. Mr. Davis, you have a little more history on this than I think Nicole or I do, given that it hasn't happened on our watch. Well, it did happen on my watch. It happened with Mr. Stevens. So Greg, do you have thoughts about this process?
The first thing I want to do is get a legal opinion because Charles and I kind of at one point at last fall when I was contemplating stepping off the board and putting my position up for election. I read this policy and felt like had I done so 35 days, I think it's 35 days,
Yeah.
prior to the November 20, 2020 election, that would have been within the two year period. And I mean, outside the two years left in my term, it would have been 2 years and 6 weeks or something, or 7 weeks. So therefore it would go up for election. Charles begged to differ and said, no, it would still be appointment of the board. And I certainly did not want to throw that on the board. So can Mike or Andrea, can you give me, explain this to me, the process of what this says?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common. It's if there's, I mean, it picks the middle of the term as the dividing point. If there's at least 2 years left, then that's worth holding a special election. If there's not, then the board appoints, because there's going to be a regular election fairly soon anyway. So yeah, in that circumstance, so you got to have an effective date. So there really wouldn't be time to get everything in motion if you, even though it says 35 days, if you waited to that day to say I resign. But you know, with reasonable notice, yeah, we can get the call of the election issued and the ballot and put it on the ballot, and you know, so yeah, it means what it says.
But I mean, from my understanding, it would be on a state scheduled election anyway.
It would. There are only certain days you can hold a special election, and they're different in odd numbered years and in even numbered years. There's also a difference in how long the call has to be published in the paper ahead of the election. It's 29 days in some instances, and it's 60 days in others. So that's why I'm saying, you know, there may not have been, I don't know when you broached this, but if you had said, for example, in July of the second year of your 4-year term, hey, I want to resign, that would leave plenty of time to get all that in place and have that office filled at the November election. And November's available in both odd and even numbered years.
Right. And it doesn't say special election, it says general election.
Well, any vacancy is, by legal terminology, a quote special election, but it's held in conjunction with the November general election.
Yeah, they wouldn't set up a poll just for the school board vacancy. It would have to be part of a larger.
Yeah.
There's
Another
always
consideration. Something. Yeah. Well, they could. I mean, some of those dates, especially in odd number years like this, there might be nothing but one issue that's on one of those special election dates. From an efficiency standpoint, it was nice to avoid that, because like you say, I mean, at least in some counties, I don't know how Athens Clarke County does it. They'll say, okay, school board, this is your election. We're going to send you the bill for it.
Oh, great. Let's not do that.
Yeah. That's why I think I'm wondering if we need to ask the Board of Elections if the 35 days needs to be changed, is my question. I mean, if we're actually going to follow the policy, then it seems like we need to be realistic with the Board of Elections. I mean, they're preparing for a November election, in terms of a general election, and that how much time they need to prepare the ballot, and that should be the date, the number of days.
Well, that's a good point, Greg, and probably that I'm almost positive. So, you know, that vacancy stuff you're looking at in policy, it comes straight out of your charter. So we can't change it anyway. The General Assembly has to change it. But that was written by the General Assembly prior to this most recent amendment to 21-2540 that tells us when the special election dates are. So that's, yeah, it probably is a mismatch there.
Okay. So that's a good thing to check. This one was
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and a regulation would be, I think, the way to do that. Regulation, because that doesn't require anything from we wouldn't be doing anything inconsistent with the General Assembly statement there that's in policy. We'd just be fleshing it out with the details, and that's what regs are for.
I mean, there's got to be something off the shelf that we don't really need a subcommittee. I mean, it seems like that every political body in the state deals with this. So, Mike, have you seen any, or Andrea, have y'all seen any policies that or regulations that kind of explain this more explicitly?
I have not. I can tell you I've seen how it happens in other places is there's not a formal process. The board members just come to the meeting and make nominations and they vote, and that's it. Andrea, have you seen anything different?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I guess you all are talking about like prescribing time to make nominations and like the specific process for all of that.
Yeah. So I think what happened in the past was that they had to have a meeting and they had to have a vote about how they were going to do it. And then once they set those rules, then I don't know exactly how it went, but I know there was a lot of discussion about how it was done the first time and then how it was done the second time and whether those were even consistent with each other and whether they were equally fair. I don't know. It was kind of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, there's been, in all the vacancies on the Clark County Board, there's been, a good desire to have some sort of open process and let's advertise so that people know this is available. And, that just doesn't happen in other places, or at least not in a lot of other places. People show up and they nominate their buddy that said he'd be willing to serve, and that's who gets affirmed, and that's it.
Wow.
Well, so that's probably not going to happen in Athens for some good reasons, I think. So, all right. Well, so rather than spend a lot of time on this meeting trying to work out a process, I'm going to suggest that maybe one or two of us, and maybe we can engage Caitlin on this in terms of looking at what other districts do, maybe compiling some options. And then Ms. Tillman, you're not muted. Anyway, I don't think we're going to solve this tonight. And plus we're using the time of district staff to do this. So maybe we could set an alternative meeting date or some other sort of subgroup to work on this, particularly since Dr. Gant, I think, has some significant opinions that we would want to incorporate. So anybody interested in doing that work? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick that I already had, the first time that we went over this, you had also asked for me to compile a list of other districts, similar policies. So I do have that list available. And really the language for part 2 is equally as vague for all the other districts.
Brilliant. Okay. So I had the brilliant idea that I had 6 months ago. Thank you. I mean, I do know how to reinvent the wheel. Great. Well, I'm glad you did that work. And so that's not a solution to go find other districts. So we're going to have to create our own. Do either you, Mr. Davis, or Attorney Hull have strong feelings about this and want to take it on as an individual? I'm sorry.
I nominate Greg Davis.
Well, I will say I've been through a number of very painful processes and I would never want a board member to go through. So yeah, I will take a stab at it and see if I can, based on our past experience and
I think go ahead.
if I can bounce some ideas off of Mike too.
That would be great.
Sure, absolutely. And I think, at least one of those 2 times Dr. Yeager's talking about something written was created. So not that it's perfect, but it might be a starting place.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Davis. I appreciate that. So shall we move to postpone this one for another meeting?
So moved.
And I will also second, and I will also contact the Board of Elections and find out what would make sense to them.
Thank you. All right, all in favor of postponing ABCDA to a future meeting?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. And I do think maybe during our retreat, we have a conversation about this. I don't know if there's room on our agenda, but as a whole board, we kind of want to think about this as a norm rather than as a policy. So, all right, moving forward, JGGA, walkers and riders. So Dr. Watley.
Yes, ma'am. We are proposing to, of course, change the title of this policy to replace with student transportation. We did go through and change some of the language as it relates to students riding on buses. And you guys can kind of see the highlighted pieces there. Mike, did you add in the attorney memo pieces up at the top?
I mean, I didn't see any problem with any of it.
Yeah, okay. So I think those are the only changes we made to that one, Dr. Yeager.
Okay, it wasn't a long policy to begin with, but yeah,
No.
so you've deleted the sentence that was there and replaced it with a good sentence. So,
Right.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And
Yeah, I mean,
so,
I think we were debating the mile versus the 1.5 miles, but maybe that, as long as we're
yes.
1.5 miles or less, we're fine.
And we talked about putting a sentence in there that said if a child resided within that mile radius, that they could ask for transportation to be provided for like safety reasons, if I recall correctly.
yes, that's correct. We did
That
talk
is
about
correct.
that.
And Mark Weaver just joined the line as well. Hey, Mark. So let's see. Do we need to add that sentence that Nicole just? 1 mile or more.
It seems like it would go best after that second sentence or third sentence where it says it shall also be the policy of the Board of Education to provide transportation for all students. If you all
Yeah, that's
had
fine.
sentence, it seems like it would go well after that before we start talking about requirements for vehicles.
So go after the word assign. Lawrence, that
Sorry,
sentence.
I was muted. Yes. If that's
Okay,
what
perfect.
the committee wants to do. I think that seems to make the most sense. Yeah, right there.
Right. Ms. Tillman, did you get that?
Can we say the sentence one more time?
Ms. Hall, can you say that cute sentence you said just a minute ago? It was so nice.
Students who reside within a mile may petition or may ask. Who would they ask?
And what objective criteria would we use to evaluate the request?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, the first, I mean, not to jump in, but the kids who come immediately to mind when Attorney Hull said that was the Sycamore Drive students who they have no sidewalks over there and they'd have to, over the the pretty busy road there Alps to get to school. And I think that is less than a mile to their school. So I think those factors might be factors the committee would want to consider, or the group or whoever evaluates it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about it definitely being something connected to a safety issue if they were under that mile, but I don't know.
If I could just add something, the reason why the wording is the way it is in the policy is because of the state laws and procedures. Within a mile and a half of the school is the criteria that they use in order to fund the busing. Here in Clark County, we always pick up, and it's based on whether or not it's a safe area for the students to walk. So that's the reason why the policy is written the way it is. It's based on the law that says a mile and a half.
And I'm not a stickler that we have to change it to be anything less than that. I just want to put the option in so that people know that they can contact somebody to say, hey, there's a safety issue here. We're within a mile. Can you at least evaluate, consider, think about
Right.
giving me something else?
That's correct.
So Mr. Weaver, when somebody asks for it, do we ever say no?
It's very rare that we do. And we have to have a real reason. And then also, we really don't say no. We try to service everyone that we possibly can.
Well, and that's why I asked the question, because when we say, you know, if you have a safety issue and we don't define it any more than that, we'll come get you. I don't know how we could ever say no.
Right.
So how about students who live less than a mile may request, not petition, because that sounds like somebody's going to judge, but they may request transportation due to safety concerns.
Correct.
Or in the event of safety concerns or something like that.
And could there be some type of maybe an exhibit for a standard form, a standard request or application that lets them check a box off? There are no sidewalks. This is unsafe because I'm walking in front of a drug house. This is unsafe because whatever. But will that give some criteria to be able to objectively evaluate it?
I think then you would paint yourself in a box because everybody will be using, I live near a drug house. I think it's advisable for us to do that. What you think, attorney?
I agree. Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. It would be a step. I mean, it'd sort of be like the vaccination form, you know, which comes from the state. If I say I have a religious objection to my child being vaccinated, you know, that's a free pass. As long as I don't make it known that I just lied to say that, then, you know, I'm okay. So.
Let me ask you, the attorneys, if you if you state it in less and more vague terms, is that worse or better? I mean, I'm thinking, you know, something like exceptions will be made on a case-by-case basis. Is that worse because it's you know, it's
Well, it does. I mean, what you say or don't say doesn't really matter. What we're getting at is you can't say no to Johnny and yes to Jill unless you've got some defensible criteria for having done so. At best, you know, I mean, at worst, it gets put in a protected characteristic. You did it on the basis of race, sex, whatever. You know, at best, you still got to have some articulable, reasonable basis for making a distinction between how you treat people, even if it's not based on a protected characteristic.
I would say, you know, if we could be, you know, if we're going to be specific for safety reasons, we say, you know, no sidewalks in the walk-in zone.
So such as
Pretty
no
solid
sidewalk.
Safety reason.
Say that again.
I mean, that seems like a pretty objective and solid safety reason. There's no sidewalks for the children to walk on. But
Right.
do you have to I mean, Mike, are you thinking that you have to spell out those specific criteria? Like,
I'm just saying, when I get a lawsuit from Johnny's parents because we didn't agree to pick him up when we agreed to pick up Jill and Joe, then I got to call my client and say, okay, why did you not pick up Johnny? And we got to have some basis to defend that on. It's nice to put it in policy so that people understand that going in and you don't end up with arbitrary decisions.
Mm.
But at the moment, what I'm hearing is that we say yes to everybody.
But what are some of the reasons that people call and ask? Because I may be creating a problem that is not really a problem I just made up.
Some of the reasons that they use is I live near a drug house, and that's one of the main ones. Also, it doesn't matter whether or not I live at the dead end, a dead end street without a cul-de-sac for the bus to turn around. But we have to say, you know, the bus can't turn around in that area, so we can't service. We need you to walk to the corner. And sometimes that is the case even without sidewalks, but we try to make that to a minimal, but we try to service everyone that we possibly can.
I'm beginning to think this is one of those cases where maybe Mr. Weaver is right. The less we say, the better. Because if we're going ahead and doing it anyway, which I've always heard we are, and that's why budget-wise we get $1 million from the state for transportation, and it costs us $10 million to bus. So we are, and that's always been the case ever since I've been on the board. So
what I heard from from Attorney Hall earlier, the first time we talked about this, was an inclusive and equitable policy doesn't assume that you know that you can break the rules. You want to make it clear that whoever reads the policy knows that they have the option to request an exception. You don't want to just have the exception for the people who have enough wherewithal to ask for that exception. Am I getting that right, Nicole?
Yeah. And I have a concern about children having to walk through dangerous situations, not just sidewalks, but the drug house situation.
Right.
That's scary for me. So I don't know if we would leave a policy vague and then develop a regulation that gives examples, or I don't know how to eliminate that lawsuit, because I can see that coming along to Mike and Andrea. But I do want to make sure that parents know that we're going to make sure your children are safe if we want to get them to school. And if there's a dangerous situation that they're encountering, you can ask for somebody to consider trying to pick that child up.
So Mr. Gaskins has put in the chat our solution, I think. Did everybody see that? Transportation may be provided for students residing less than 1.5 miles from their home school based on the existence of hazardous conditions. Transportation for pupils attending a school outside their attendance zone will not be provided unless in accordance with legal mandates or as part of a board-approved program. The existence of such conditions shall be determined by the superintendent or their designee. The superintendent shall establish such procedures as necessary to administer the transportation program.
I like it if we get rid of pupils.
I know.
that's quick thinking.
And I think the 1.5 is actually one for us, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It is one,
That's
yeah.
correct.
So just change pupils to students, I think, Ms. Tillman, and that'll be that one.
And delete the 1/2.
So Mark, I just have a quick question, and I think I'm probably thinking along the lines of Nicole. When we think about, kind of analyzing the data as to the frequency of calls with parents, concerned that their children are walking through dangerous zones such as the drug house, is there any discussion around possibly rerouting that area, or I'm just trying to think, like, because if it's one child, it's probably all the children in that area.
We look at that and we try to make sure that it's safe for all, the driver as well as the students that are being transported at the time. In some instances, we know about the situation or it has been reported, and in some instances we don't. But in cases, we want to make sure that everyone is safe and that it's safe for everybody.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Gaskins.
Yes.
I think
Thank
that's
you,
a good solution. And I guess what this does is it leaves it up to y'all to figure out a mechanism.
I think it leaves it where Mr. Weaver probably knew it was and has already been doing this. If he ever said just a flat, what I'm gathering is he's never said a flat no. He might have said we have to get you here instead of there.
Yeah.
If there ever comes a situation where he says a flat no, he's gonna have to pick up the phone and call Andrea or me first.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Great. Thank you
Perfect.
so much. Beautiful.
You know, and it's like the other thing that, and now that I think about the other call that we get is, I live next door to a dangerous dog. And so we treat all of them the same, you know, from a walking standpoint, what's safest for the students. So we look at that and we try to make sure that we honor that.
As a
Thank you.
parent, I appreciate that.
I really do. Thank you, Mark.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Yeah, it means a lot.
Okay. Shall we take a motion to move this forward to the board as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you so much. All right. Oh, goody. Student dress code. Let's do that one.
Oh, that's a good one. Andrea and I worked on this one, and Andrea chime in because
I think you did a great job, by the way. I
we
think
wanted to make sure this policy was equitable and fair to all people. I will say that over and over again. So
that's the most
Y'all saw the
comprehensive.
news yesterday or this morning, you see that, Department of Education's announced they're, getting in line with current thinking and law on these issues anyway. So timely. And that's all I'll say, because this is Andrea and Jillian's deal, not mine.
That's great.
I think it's very comprehensive. I think it's
Yeah.
whoever. I think y'all did a great job. I was very impressed with it.
Thank you. I think Andrea and I had like some colorful discussion around just making sure that all students could express themselves, and we had this long discussion about the fingertip rule, because I remember when that came out, I was subject to the fingertip rule and the comments that were said. And so we don't want other children to have to endure that. So I'm hoping and praying that this kind of eliminates some of that marginalizing of certain people in schools.
I like it. I think it's awesome. My only question is, and it's just a corollary question, do we know if there's going to be a uniform requirement, or is that decided at a local school level? That's local.
That was a question we had, Brandon. So
the building leaders, schools decide uniforms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Hillsman, but not, I don't know which one of the middle schools are not doing it, but JD Harris. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's a building decision. Not intended to prevent schools from adopting uniform requirements consistent with the core values and overarching goals of this policy. Yeah. So that was very nicely done. Thank you so much for the good hard work.
Andrea's amazing.
We appreciate you.
We relive some of our own personal experiences. And
I know.
So
we did.
Yeah. It felt cathartic in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody,
many stories were shared.
Well, you're making the world a better place. So thank you very much.
Well, you all are the ones who have to adopt it. So think it's just a proposal, but you'll be the ones making it happen.
So I move that we push this on up to the full board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great job, ladies.
Excellent. Thank you.
Uh,
JDD, student suspension. Again,
Yes.
another one where you've done a lot of good work.
Absolutely. Some things that we wanted to lift and was change. I'm saying not lift, but just change some of the language that was used and really emphasize the multi-tiered systems of supports. And then also, as it relates to students who are special education students and our students with 504, they have special rights as it relates to suspension. In school and out of school suspension. So we kind of flush that out in the policy.
Great.
I appreciate that again. Great work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ditto. Do we need to have any more discussion about this one? We all happy with it? Mr. Davis? I can't see your face. I'm gonna try to change my screen so I can see your face. There we
No,
are.
I'm very happy with it.
Okay,
Great job.
all right. Let's move it up.
It's your turn, Greg.
I want to know, I want you to always be first and I'll be second. That's fine.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Can I make a motion as chair or can I not make a motion? I've always wondered about that.
You can.
I can. All right. So I'll take turns. All right. Next, JDDR1, which is the revised regulation, which we still have the power to approve until the other one passes finally. So
And I
if you want to,
I do want to point something out that we talk about, in the board going too deep into the regulation. Sometimes it does go the other way, and so I think there were policy things that were pulled out of the regulation and put in the policy, and so I do appreciate that because I think the policy, it does have more weight to it as a consequence. So anyway, I think that the changes made a good differentiation between policy and regulation.
I think that's a compliment. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions about this one? Okay. So I'll make a motion to move it up.
Second.
All in
First.
favor?
Oh yeah, that third, whatever.
Third, okay. Hey, all right, so we got through all the J's. Do we have a vote? All in favor?
All of
Aye.
it.
Aye.
All right. And it's 5:33 and all we have left is BCBI. Nice work. So this one, I think I wrote an alternative version of this one. I'm not sure whatever happened to it. It removed the particular times and minutes and wrote a sentence that basically said it's up to, so we will provide a period of time at every meeting as the law states, but that we leave it up to the people that make the agenda of the meeting to establish whether we will read all the letters or stop reading the letters or stop allowing the letters after a certain period of time. So it lets it be a little bit gray. On the event that we have like a 4-hour, very difficult meeting, that could be a meeting where we try to, I don't think this is going to come up hugely frequently anymore. I don't know. What do you think? Where is everybody thinking right now?
I have a question about the residents. Why is it necessary to give the place of residence? Is it that we don't allow people not within the Clark County School District, I guess, address location to provide public comments, or why is that piece in there? And I'm just curious. And I ask because I know when we had a lot of emails, we had several. I don't live here, but I'm tied to, I'm writing out of state. So
Yeah, I think we accept public comment from anyone. I don't remember, I mean, the address thing must be kind of old back when, like now everybody just sends their email, but you're right. We do want to know if someone is a resident and maybe has children in the district versus is just speaking from outside the system. I appreciate that information. I don't know if it's required, but it certainly helps me weight to some extent the input.
definitely, I just didn't know if that could, if there was a requirement that they reside within the district that would actually eliminate.
No, no. Do we need to clarify that then?
No, that was just, I was thinking of alternative ways to shave down on the massive comments for people that did not have a stake, so to speak, with
Oh,
the district. So that's why I asked that.
okay. So that's a good point. We could prioritize.
I think that's a very legitimate point.
Yeah, nice. Good idea. Okay, so
Because really, they're not our constituents, right? And
Right.
so it's nice that they have opinions, but I guess that's the best I have is but.
so
Instead
maybe
of place of resident, I'm sorry. I
No, go
started
ahead.
talking before.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead, go ahead. Well, I was just
Um,
going to suggest maybe put county of residence instead of place. And that,
Mm.
you know, to get past that awkward moment of people feeling like they have to give their physical address.
So then we could put a sentence, priority. So if we allow for the possibility that Dr. Gant or whoever is setting the agenda limits the number of letters, priority would be given to residents of Clark County.
Mike or Andrea, do we have to allow everybody to speak? Can we say you have to be a resident of Clark County to provide a public comment?
I don't think that would be right.
I gotta say, I've never heard of anybody doing that. So I've never had to answer the question. I don't know if Andrea knows or not.
Because
but-
we've had like, for instance, teacher organizations, they may have a representative that comes from Atlanta to speak on behalf of the teachers, and to say that they can't do that would be.
Yeah, that's that's an example. I was just thinking more broadly. There's any number of, there may be an infinite number of groups that are headquartered outside Athens, Clark County that might have an interest and you might want to hear from.
That's true. I guess I didn't think about that. I was thinking more so we got a lot of comments saying, I don't live in Clark County, but I grew up there, or I want to come and visit this historical building. And they weren't our constituents, but that was my question regarding that. And then my concerns about this policy that y'all have heard a million times. One, I don't even know if we're going to keep doing the emails. So the public comments received by the deadline that cannot be accommodated will be a part of the record. If we're not making them email that entire comment, and I don't think that will be doable because there won't be anything to have be a part of a public record. And if we are going to require them to send in an email, then I have issues with equity and everybody not having the same privilege to have access to a computer to do it by a designated time, or being literate enough to write an email where they may feel comfortable speaking in public.
So can I respond to that? So I feel like there should be a public record of every comment. Now, if the public record is a recording of the meeting with the speaker standing at the microphone, that's still a public record, right? So you're right that if they want to come speak to us, it's on the public record. We don't need to have a written copy. I guess the question would be, is if we limit the number of speakers to 2 hours or 1 hour or whatever, then they don't get to speak. They can't be on the public record. Maybe we make a way for them to send their comments to us in writing, in whatever form of writing they want. And that becomes part of the public record. I was trying to create a mechanism for including
comments that might not fit onto the agenda. That's what I was trying to make for the other written record of public comment, is to have other public be able to see what the comments were. So, because that way we're not limiting people's ability to give us their opinions. We get emails every day. People can send us their opinions.
Right.
What we would be limiting if we set a time limit is the ability to speak publicly and express your point to the public about this issue. And so I was trying to find a mechanism where that would still be possible if we didn't have time for everybody. So we would have a public website that you could go read the public comments. So you could still make your point publicly without, if you weren't allowed to speak because we had to set a time limit.
Let me just go ahead, Nicole.
I was just saying, I can see that. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, I'm just saying, I've done 180 degrees on this, because when we first talked about it, I said, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, because I've, and especially in what I've gone through with having, an hour and a half of my name bantered about. But I think any restriction is, I can't support any restriction. I do think that we have created a situation, and the government and community relations committee is trying to remedy that. And I really appreciate the policy that was the committee, the restructuring of our committees, including the government and community relations committee, which demands that, or specifies that we have at least 2 public forums, the board and the public, in some fashion or the other, every year. We haven't done that. And so the only time, now granted, we do get emails, and occasionally we get phone calls, depending on basically who you are. If you're well established in the community, then a lot of people are going to call you. If you're a transplant like me, I don't get that many calls. I never had kids in the school system, so I don't have mommies and daddies that I watch soccer with. But I guess at the end of the day, I think that we need to find other forums so that people won't believe that the only time they can ever actually exert their opinion and be heard by others, because that's part of the show too. And sometimes it's a dog and pony show, and sometimes it's just piling on because I want everybody to know where I'm at on this issue. But at the end of the day, I don't see how we can limit it. And I don't like long meetings, but I just don't. I just feel very uncomfortable in setting any type of limit. And I think we need to find more areas to do it. And maybe now the 24-hour prior to the meeting, that in a way makes sense to me, so that you don't have someone, put out an email blast, that morning and say, we've got to speak at the board meeting. And next thing you know, you got 20 people. But this at least 24 hours will give us a chance to digest what's on the schedule, and how many folks we've got speaking, and that may adjust. We may pull something off the agenda because of that, and let the officers and the superintendent make that decision. But so I would stick with the 24 hours. I don't have a problem with that, because if you got something to say, certainly it's got to have taken place prior to your reasoning was prior to 24 hours, more than likely. But in terms of any other limitation, I am still open to 2 minutes though, and that's something else that's not that I've said before, but no one's really picked up on it. So I don't think it's a very popular issue. But when I've listened to like our last round of comments, after 2 minutes, I knew exactly where that person was coming from. And I felt like that extra minute was kind of like totally unnecessary. And so I would certainly support 2 minutes, but an unlimited number of people.
Welcome to the dark side, Greg. We
I'm
finally
there. I'm
agree.
there. I'm there.
I like that. I think that would encourage us to get outside of the box and have things like town halls and different forums to be able to engage and connect with the community so they don't, do what Greg.
So I'm going to say that that is an unrelated issue. If we want to have more interactions with the public, we have more interactions with the public at town halls and whatever other kinds of forum we create. What we don't want to do is have that happen in a board meeting where we are supposed to be conducting business and we are using the time of the district staff. We are doing the district business in our board meetings. And so I am totally open to having more town halls and more open forums and more discussion. That is absolutely would be great. I agree completely with that. What I don't necessarily agree with is that has to happen at the board meeting, at the time we have to do the work of the district. Because I am exhausted after 4 hours and we do not make good decisions after 4 hours. I don't care how much I've thought about it beforehand. I just don't make good decisions. And we're not supposed to decide before we come to the meeting. We're supposed to be open to what's presented to us. So
how will we, so for me, and I won't speak for anybody else, but for me as a board member, I can't truly do diligence without hearing the opinions of the public. Like I may think I have a good grasp on the issues, but if I hear 8 comments about the same issues, that may trigger, maybe you need to step back and really think about this because maybe you're missing something, or this is a really sensitive issue for the community. You really need to give some thought on to how you vote. And I think the impact of having people be able to give those comments at the board meeting helps us do what we're supposed to do as board members.
And they're giving you those comments because you're going to get them anyway. If there are 25 letters and we only have time for 10, you're still going to get the 25 letters. We're still
25 letters from the people who have the time and the access to get to a computer and feel comfortable with typing out a nice formatted email and sending it. I'm not going to get everybody. I'm going to get a small segment. And that's what I see. When we did our last rounds of letters, I counted mainly 3 schools and 1 demographic of where those letters came from. All of the public comments came from 3 schools and a demographic. And that's not diverse. That's not encompassing everyone. People may not feel comfortable with writing a letter or may not have issues. We have access, rather. We know that our students struggle with access because we had to scramble and get hotspots. So expecting their parents now to be able to get to a computer in time and type up an email, I think it's a big ask if we want to truly encourage more participation among different segments of our community.
So you think those people will come to a board meeting and speak in a microphone instead of writing a letter?
I hope so.
Well, they have in the past. Can I make a motion that an amendment or something that we go from 3 minutes to 2 minutes? I mean, that's I don't know where the 3 minute is a magic number.
I'm not gonna vote for 3 minutes. I think 2 minutes. I think that's a limit. I didn't get to finish letters at 3 minutes, maybe because I talk slow. I don't know, but
but we're talking about people speaking. We're this thing about letters is a result of the pandemic. I mean, we never read letters. People always came to the meetings and always spoke publicly up until the pandemic. And presumably we're going to go back for that. I don't want to set our policies based on the pandemic mode. We may have to revisit this policy as a result, but
that's fair.
But people coming to speak, they have 2 minutes to express their opinion. I think that would allow, I mean, if you multiply that, then instead of having 24 people times 3, you got 24 people times 2. And I think that gives you an extra half hour. So it doesn't address totally what Trish is saying, but I think it helps. And then I think the 24 hours prior to the meeting should be in there.
Agreed. I could support that. That makes sense. It's different than reading a letter and speaking at a mic. I can agree with that.
And I don't know, I'll just add this, and I many of us have to jump off, and I hate to stop this because it's good conversation, but that event starts at 6 and I'm supposed to speak at 6:05. But but I wish there was some way, and we won't solve this today, but I do wish there was some way that we could get it to a place when there is a group that they could say, this is our statement and this has been signed by 85 people, rather than them sending out a form letter and 85 people sending in the same comment. I don't know how you capture that. We may not be able to capture that, but to me, that is just as effective for you all to hear that 203 teachers signed a petition saying that they don't like the new evaluation tool, rather than having to have 203 teachers send in the same email, because they're pretty much the same. And then I even read some communications last week that said, here's the form letter, but change the first and third line so they don't all look alike. Okay, well, what's the effective, you know what I mean? Like, what's the impact of that? If they all are basically saying the same thing, don't do X, then it's saying don't do X, even if you change, I've worked for 5 years and I have 3 dogs and a cat, you still have the same form letter. So I just wish that we could somehow capture, if we could get groups, instead of sending it out to a listserv of 500 people, to just get people to sign that form and then say, we have signatures from however many community members. I don't know how you do that, but to me, that's what we've seen a lot of, is like the exact same letter, give or take one sentence.
I like that.
But Dr.
I don't know how
Thomas,
to make that. I don't know how to word that. I mean, we've talked about having a spokesperson, but I think that some people have gotten in their minds that the more people, and there is power in numbers, but many of the decisions have already kind of been made, changes. We've heard it before we even get there. And I think that's the hard part for me, is a lot of it, they've already sent the letters. You all have read the letters. We've read the letters, and we've made adjustments by the time we get to the meeting, but we still have to sit through 2 hours of comment, and we've already fixed the issue.
Exactly.
That is part that, to me, is waiting to then, because by the time we get to then, generally the decision has been made the week before. So to me, it's all out of order anyway. I think it creates a structure where people try to force your hand on things on the spot, rather than having that communication leading up to that moment, and then we're able to make adjustments. So a lot of times we sit there and we're kind of looking at each other like, okay, we've already pulled that. Not necessarily so much because, but we've heard feedback and there's some things maybe we need to change. So looking at last week, we had pulled the thing with Georgia conflict, partly because we're like, okay, let's just look at this, but we had already gotten that feedback. It was already pulled, but we still had to have 40 comments about it. So I don't know how, because we had already gotten the comments and they were communicating with board members and copying us. So I don't know, like, it's those kinds of things that I wish we could fix. If we've already changed the policy on when buses are going to pick up, do we need like 50 people to read us the same letter? I don't know. That's just my random thinking.
but what about if they're speaking? See, I still think, and Dr. Thomas, we may need to adjust this on, in case of a pandemic and we have to read the letters, to have another policy. But in terms of people speaking at a meeting, I don't think we've had a problem of people reading the exact words. And we have had people stand up and say, I represent, 200, 150 people.
So you're thinking that maybe some of that will take care of itself?
Yeah, I mean, if we need to have, in cases of when we can't have public meetings, but I think if we go back to the way it used to be, I mean, sometimes the meetings would be long, but I think that it's nothing been like we've had during the pandemic.
That's what we signed up for.
I agree with you.
That's what we signed up for. And I think when we do it in conjunction with having different forms, I think it will start to alleviate itself. I mean, right now, this is the only form, so it is long. And I don't think that this has to be necessarily tied to having town halls, but they do relate. You know, if this is the only way that people feel like they can be heard, then they're going to flood to the one place. So
But if you got 24 people that are willing to get in their car and come to a meeting
it's an important issue.
for 2 minutes, you know, it's equitable insofar as if you've got transportation.
I'm
And,
working on that too. I have a plan for that. I haven't presented yet.
okay.
So you just said 24, Greg. Does that mean you're okay with the 45-minute limit?
No, I've just said 24 or 30 or 6 or whatever. I think that people who get into a car and come to a meeting and let you know 24 hours ahead of time that they want 2 minutes to speak, I think they have a right to speak.
All right. So Angela, we need to move on. Everybody's got to go. We've got 4 minutes. So I'm reading this. All meetings of the Board of Education are open to the public as stipulated by law. It is the belief of the school board that members of the public should have an opportunity to speak at regular board meetings. Therefore, the agenda for every regularly scheduled board meeting will provide a period of time
For public comment, period.
for public comment, period. All right. I'm good with that because that then does not say any member of the public to speak, which is what it was before. So the meeting may provide a period of time. Okay, members of the public who wish to speak, must contact 24 hours prior to the meeting. Great. Groups are asked to designate a single spokesperson.
I have no problem with that. We can ask them. I have no problem with asking.
Agree. They can be asked, but not required.
Okay. And then comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Are you on board with that, Nicole?
Yeah, I am.
2 minutes. At this point, remarks must be concluded, Public comments received by the deadline that cannot be accommodated just cannot be accommodated, period. Get rid of the in the 45 minutes.
How about comments received via email will become part of the public record? Just
Okay. Public comments.
I like that. I like that.
Received by mail or email or post or email.
Sure.
I love that.
Okay, I'm good with that because what I think honestly, that allows a little bit of flexibility without explicitly saying, because it doesn't say every member of the public will be accommodated, which I think we need to make sure we don't promise that.
I like it, and I think it's equitable. I think that if you have to work and you can't make it to the board meeting or you don't have transportation, maybe you can get to a computer. But if you can't get to a computer, maybe you can make plans to be there in person. I like it.
Okay, I'm good. A motion to approve and send up to the board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. I appreciate all the time and effort you put into this meeting. And I'm not sure who's still left on the call, but thank you, everyone else. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Angela. You hold this together.
I try. And now I'm gonna go use the bathroom and then rush to downtown. Yay!
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.